Hi everyone, let me ask you this. When was the last time you really checked the label before buying your whey protein? Most people would just grab what's popular or what's cheap or what's being peddled by influencers. But believe me when I say that not all whey proteins are created equal. In fact, some of the most well marketed brands could be cutting corners, which are affecting your results and may affect your health in the long run. In today's video, I am going to walk you through a clear step-by-step blueprint to spot high quality proteins every single time. And make sure you watch till the end because I'll be giving you a live demo of my dynamic scoring system, a whey protein quality calculator if you will, using a real product example. So you'll see exactly how to score your existing supplement before purchasing it the next time. I'm Dr. Sabyasachi Sengupta and welcome to Health and Nutrition with Sabyasachi. Let's dive in. Let me quickly introduce myself before we proceed further. I am an eye specialist and a vitreoretinal surgeon, and I practice at Future Vision Eye Care in Mumbai. And I did my clinical research training at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine and the School of Public Health, and I have more than 120 publications to my credit. And I think my research background gives me the ability to stay on top of evolving literature for health and nutrition and bring it to you in a package which is readily understood. Also very quickly, this is where I went from 103 kilos to about 78 kilos in a period of about 6 to 7 months, based purely on health and nutrition that I'm going to describe to you and that I have been describing for the last 4 or 5 lectures, and also some amount of weight training and physical activity which was added at a much later date. And I'm hoping that you will actually try and have results that I experienced over the a magical 6 or 7 months. And this is how I am in the same attire, separated by about 7 or 8 months, and you can clearly see the huge differences. A quick disclaimer is that I'm not an expert in nutrition or physical training, and whatever I am saying is based on my research background, like I said, and this is purely meant for those who are wanting to get fitter and yet don't have disease but have maybe metabolic control loss. But some of these principles could also be applicable to early diabetics and those with metabolic diseases. Also, thank you very much to each and every one of you for tuning in and for listening to my lectures, subscribing to my channel and encouraging me. And if you already haven't subscribed, please do so that we can keep discussing science on health and nutrition. A quick recap before we go ahead, because remember this is an ongoing series. What we talked about a couple of lectures back is that I encouraged you to look at low carbohydrate and high protein diets and calculate how much protein you need on a daily basis based on your ideal body weight and your amount of physical activity, and then look at your protein sources from either plant or animal or dairy. And when you calculate amount of protein that you're consuming and compare it with the requirement, you will clearly see that most of our diets are protein deficient, especially in the Indian context. So what you do about this is you need to supplement this from external sources, and that is where protein supplements or powders come in. In the previous lecture, we talked about the two main ones, that is plant protein and whey protein, and I showed you a simple questionnaire which will help you choose between the two. And if you haven't seen that lecture, you could actually very well do that. What we concluded was that protein is essential for everybody, not just for gym goers or for athletes. The ideal whey protein is from grass-fed cows and protein isolate, which we'll discuss a little bit more in detail going in this lecture. Plant protein is also very good, and it's easier to start and choose wisely whether you want to go for whey or plant protein. So this is the overall macro picture where we started with discussing nutrients, including, and we zoomed in on protein as the main macronutrient. Then I showed you what an ideal protein-rich plate could look like in the Indian context, both in the vegetarian as well as non-vegetarian, menus. Then we looked at how to choose whey and plant protein. Today we are going to look at how to choose the best protein especially when you want to go for whey proteins. That's how do you choose, or what are the selection criteria you use, is what we are going to take a deeper dive in today. So, are you really sure what is there in that large jar of protein that you're buying, and does it satisfy some of the very basic criteria that you should be looking at for long-term health? So what we're really going to discuss today is predominantly about whey proteins, and I'm going to show you a scoring system or a calculator to determine the quality of the product that you will buy, but you could also modify this for plant proteins. We discussed last time that there are 3 types of whey protein derived from filtration. First you get concentrate, then you process it further, you get whey isolate, and then you get whey hydrolysate. And so the 3 types of proteins are concentrate, isolate, and hydrolysate. Most brands will give you a combination of concentrate and isolate. So the ideal whey protein is something which is derived from grass-fed cows. It's whey isolate, and it should be third-party tested, which we'll look a little bit more in detail today, and it should have no artificial ingredients, right? So in addition to these, what more should we look at before we choose the protein? And remember, the details are in the labeling and the websites. So based on my research, I have developed a scoring system or a whey protein quality calculator that we'll look at a little bit ahead, and you can jump onto it using the timestamps below. But I would really recommend that you go through the basics before jumping on to some of the last parts of the lecture. So for this scoring system, what do we measure? So these are the things we need to measure: the sourcing, the type of whey in your powder that you're wanting to buy, the protein purity, sweeteners, digestive enzymes, certifications, and some of the other things. Before that, what we will do is also classify each one of these into what is ideal, what is desirable, and what is a compromise. So it's going to be a combination of, when you look at, say, type of whey, we are going to see what is the ideal, what is the desirable, and then what is a compromise. Similarly for sweeteners, for enzymes, for certifications. Right? So first and foremost is the sourcing. Is this grass-fed? Right? Why it matters is because these are generally from cows which produce milk which are higher in omega-3, and therefore it's also present in the whey that you consume, and generally are cleaner sources. And how do you find this is from the websites, because most manufacturers who use grass-fed whey will display it very boldly, and if nothing is mentioned, the default is not grass-fed. So what we're looking for is grass-fed whey, and that is the ideal. It should be clearly mentioned on the website. Some companies use a combination of either of grass-fed as well as grain-fed whey, which is pasture-raised, right? So this is not ideal but desirable. And the last is regular grain-fed, or there is no information provided on the website either, right? So this is pretty much the default, right? So if there is no information provided on the website, trust that it will be regular grain-fed, right? And therefore the quality of the whey may not be as high as we want it to be. The next is milk extraction, or extraction process that is being used to extract that whey from the milk. And we have seen more in details in the previous lecture. So overall, what is ideal is direct milk extraction, or also called cold processed. This is most ideal because none of the milk proteins are denatured. They retain their quality and are also generally higher in quality. So we want direct extraction. If not, partially extracted with direct processes like cold processing, and partially using chiseling whey, which is the industry default. It is not ideal but desirable. And the cheese extraction or chiseling, which is actually the default, which is there in most brands that you will see in the market, it is a bit of a compromise. That's because there is chances of contamination, and the quality of the whey is not as good as direct extraction, and the whey could be, the proteins could be denatured, right? So bioavailability is lesser. It will cause you gut problems and all of that, right? So look at the website and see if this information is there. Many websites will not have any information. So how do you know whether the extraction process is clean and direct or by chiseling? So these are some soft clues which will give you an idea that this perhaps is chiseling. First and foremost is use of soy lecithin, and to a lesser extent sunflower lecithin, but the lecithin is really used to make whey more soluble. So soy lecithin is very common in chiseling based whey, right? Because it's less naturally soluble, than milk extracted whey, right? So the cheeseling whey is more granular and does not mix very easily. It's not so soluble, right? So, so to make it better, the company will use soy lecithin. So presence of soy lecithin, not so much sunflower, but soy lecithin is a relatively strong predictor of, it's not a rule, but it's a soft clue that this is most likely cheeseling whey. Others are addition of gums like guar gum, xanthan gum, and cellulose gum. These are thickeners and stabilizers, again used for stabilizing low grade whey. Others are polysorbates, mono and diglycerides, and sometimes nothing is mentioned at all. And be aware that when there is only whey concentrate without mention of anything else, it is likely to be not direct extraction but cheeseling, right? And could cause a lot of gut problems. So these are some soft ways of detecting whether it's cheeseling or it's direct extraction or it's a mixture, right? So please look at some of these on the websites. The third is whether the whey has concentrate or isolate or hydrolysate, right? We know that there are three forms of whey, and this is something that we have looked at in the previous lecture, where we saw that whey isolate is perhaps the best whey, has the highest protein content among these. It is low in lactose, it is low in fat, and it is fast digesting, right? So what we would want in a product is to be pure isolate or maybe with some amount of hydrolysate. This is ideal. Unfortunately, most brands in the market will give you a combination of isolate and isolate and concentrate. Some have more isolate, some have more concentrate, right? So this is okay, but not ideal. And the third is concentrate alone. This is a definite compromise. As you know, concentrate can have impurities, or concentrate can have gut issues. It is not okay for lactose tolerant people. So having only concentrate is a definite compromise, and I would not recommend it. The next is sweeteners used. So all of these sweeteners that I have listed here are non-caloric. That is, they don't cause sugar spikes and insulin spikes, which we don't want, right? So the best one is monk fruit. It's a naturally occurring fruit, and it does not it is relatively well tolerated in the body, and therefore I think it's ideal. Also, if it's an unflavored whey with no sweeteners, that is also fine, and that is of course ideal. The other is stevia, which is also natural sweetener derived from leaves, stevia leaves. And why I don't say it's ideal and it's desirable, or it's a step down slightly, is because it could have a little bit of a aftertaste, a little metallic aftertaste sometimes, and it is not agreeable to many people who have reactions in terms of gut problems, too much bloating and diarrhea and other things. So stevia is a little step down. And what is perhaps not okay are use of artificial sweeteners like sucralose, asalfame K, that's also called ACE K, aspartame, etc. These are compromises. Why? Because even if they are FDA approved, their long-term implications are not known today, right? So there are some reports that some of these are carcinogenic and others. So we don't know about these, but in the long run, I would sort of try to bank more on monk fruit-based sweeteners and not artificial sweeteners. The next criteria is flavor and taste, because sometimes this is very important for us to keep coming back to the product, right? So chocolate or any mild flavors are ideal. That's because these go well and blend well with whey, right? And so these are, I call them ideal. Other flavors like mango, strawberry, badam, etc., these are perhaps not ideal but desirable, but they keep us coming back for them again and again. So these are all right. And what is perhaps getting the least marks is unflavored whey. So there is no taste at all, right? It's a bit of a compromise. That's because it's very difficult to keep coming back to unflavored whey over and over again. It becomes monotonous. The sixth criterion, and really very important, is third-party certifications, right? So the ones listed in green, that is NSF, Labdoor, and Informed Choice, are gold standards for global testing. What they do is test that product, that whey powder, and confirm exactly what the ingredients specify is there in that or not. If they say 90% isolate, the NSF certification will confirm it's there. It will also test for heavy metals. It will also test for pesticides and amino acid spiking and banned substance spiking and all of that. And NSF also does lab visits on a periodic basis and keeps testing multiple batches. So NSF is perhaps the best one. Labdoor and Informed Choice are also great, and these are gold standard. So these are ideal. Some brands may not be able to afford these testings, so they have others which are also okay but not ideal. So Trustified is one such, which is an Indian brand which is up and coming, and Trustified is being used pretty extensively in the Indian scenario, yet it is not yet gold standard and not globally considered. Others are HACCP, ISO 2015, and maybe others which are recognized in other countries but not globally. But some form of third-party certification is very important. And if there is no certification that is not tested by any third party, then it is a definite compromise. You will get misled when you see things like manufactured in an FDA approved facility or a GMP approved facility and all of that. So the facility may be approved, but the actual product has not been tested. These are two different things. So beware, and definitely don't choose brands which don't boast of any third party certifications. The next, and perhaps the most important, is scoop size and protein purity. By what I mean by that is that an ideal protein should have about 80% of that scoop have protein in it. So if it's a 30 gram scoop, you should have more than 24 grams protein. Right, so 25 to 27, that's about 83 to 90% of all of that you're consuming is protein. Anything less than that is not ideal but tolerable, desirable. That's about 22 to 24 grams per 30 gram scoop. So don't get fooled by the amount of protein displayed on the packing. So some will say 28 grams, some will say 30 grams per scoop, but actually the scoop sizes will be far larger. Right, so it's important to look at the scoop size as well as what's being displayed, right? So, and anything less than 22 grams per scoop or per 30 grams of scoop is definitely a compromise. Let's see, for example, this is a well-respected brand which I am not going to name at present. So if you see this protein, it's about 24 grams of protein per 30.4 grams per scoop, right? So 24 grams per serving, that is 30.4. So you just divide the two for purity. So you'll see 24 divided by 30.4 is about 79%. That's pretty good, right? So if this was 30 instead of 30.4, you would get an 80%, right? So this is another very well respected brand which is being used pretty rampantly today. This is 24.5 grams of protein per 35 gram serving. So this is not a 30 gram, this is a 35 gram serving. This is a much larger serve. When you divide these two, 24.5 by 35, you will see that only 70% of the scoop is protein. Rest is other things, right? Like fat and sodium and flavoring agents and sweeteners and all of that. So this is perhaps far lower than what we expect, right? So so the ideal would be more than 80% purity. Between 75 and 80 is desirable. Less than 75 is a compromise, right? It also depends on your amount of activity that you're doing. If you are doing a lot of physical activity, you want the ideal one. And if not, you could perhaps even go for something which is a compromise if you're in love with the brand. The next, we're diving deep into protein content, right? So we are looking at essential amino acid content per scoop. In the last lecture, we have seen that essential amino acids are the ones which are not produced by the body. There are 9 essential amino acids. In total, they should be more than 12 grams per scoop, which is ideal. Between 10 and 12 grams, it's desirable but not ideal. And less than 10 grams, it's a definite compromise. So some brands will give you this EAA score or total content, and some will not. They will just describe how much of each is there. So these are the 9 essential amino acids, out of which leucine, isoleucine and valine are called branch chain amino acids, and these are the most important for muscle gain and recovery. So we'll look at it in the next slide. But overall, the others are lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan and histidine. Without geeking out too much, what you can do if the EAA total amount is not given per scoop is look at each one and then add them up. Right, so you will get a total EAA score or grams per scoop, right, or per serving. So more than 12 is what is desirable. Now, if we want to go deeper, BCAA content per scoop is also very crucial. That's because these are the amino acids which really matter, right, for most of us. So if it's more than 5 grams per scoop of branch chain amino acids, that is leucine, isoleucine and valine, it's ideal. Between 4 and 5 grams, it's desirable, and less than 4 grams per scoop is a bit of a compromise, and there's a lot of theory which is backing all of this, right? So this is what you look at for the BCAA content, and where you will find it is in the packaging or the website, right, or the ingredient list, right? So somewhere you should be able to find this. we're diving more into leucine content. That is because this is the one amino acid amongst all which is important for muscle growth and recovery. That's considered it like a ignition for your car, right? Without igniting the car engine, you will not be able to consume the petrol or diesel or whatever that may be, right? So leucine is the one which does that for muscles, and there are many pathways such as activation of the mTOR pathway. So leucine is the most important of all amino acids, and each scoop therefore should have at least 2.5 grams leucine, which is ideal. Between 2 and 2.5 is maybe desirable, and less than 2 grams is a definite compromise. Last but not the least, we look at digestive enzymes and probiotics, and that's because, let's face it, whey proteins definitely do cause bloating and do cause GI upset. So if we have a brand which has both enzymes and probiotics, enzymes like bromelain, papain, or probiotics like lactobacillus and many others, right? So if both are there, they'll be ideal and they'll be much gut friendly. If there is one of those two, either enzymes or probiotics, it's not ideal but desirable. And if none of these are included, it's a compromise. So we've looked at 11 different criteria, right? So it's now getting a bit nerdy. So how do you put it all together in one place and make sense of all this? That's what I have done. I have actually developed this scoring system, or like I said, it's a calculator. And once you take a look at this calculator, you'll realize that it's not at all difficult. Let me show you a live demo of what I'm talking about. And this is a Google Sheets document, the link of which is given in the description below, right? So you can actually go, click, open it, use it, and spread it around. And I'm hoping that some of you will actually evaluate some of your brands that you use and put out scores in the comments below. So let's take a look at the live demo. So this is the demo whey protein scoring sheet, or the whey protein scoring calculator, right? So if you see here, this shows how to use this protein supplement scoring sheet, right? So step one really is the selection column. So these are all the criteria that you discussed, right? Grass-fed, milk extraction, type of whey, whether it's isolate or concentrate, and all of these, sweeteners, flavor and taste. So we have discussed all of these, EAA, scoop size, BCAA, content, digestive, 3 ideal, desirable, and compromise. Let's look at a product which is grass-fed cows, right? And you select that, you will see this point system has gone to 5. So there is a point system at the back end, which I'll also describe to you. But this is in the beginning. Extraction method, you're not really sure. Let's say it's a compromise. That's it's chiseling, which is the industry standard still today. So it just gets 2 points here. The type of whey, let's say, these are the 3 options. So we have discussed all of these, right? So it could be isolate, pure isolate, or a desirable, that is isolate plus concentrate, which is most common in the market today. Let's choose that. If you look at sweeteners, maybe it's a brand which is compromising and using artificial sweeteners, which is also the standard in the industry today. Flavor and taste, maybe it is an ideal brand for it offers chocolate or some mild flavors. Maybe it is a brand which offers high quality of third-party testing. And so we are not looking at any particular brand now, right? So scoop size, maybe it's a brand which is desirable between 75 and 80%, right? So if you look at that, the score changes on its own. The EAA content is similar, right? So you just click this and you just add from that ingredient list or website, and you will see the score form. And in the end, maybe this is a brand which has none of these. There is no enzymes or probiotics. So if you see, this is a total score which comes out, right? This is a total score, and this is how you interpret it. If its score is more than 90, it's an outstanding quality protein and great that you can go for it. Between 75 and 89, it's a good quality but not outstanding. Between 60 and 74, it's an average quality protein, and less than 60, it is a poor quality protein, right? So these are all arbitrary, but if you get a score of 62, it's bordering on poor, right? And if you get a score of 74, it's bordering on good quality. So these are all a bit arbitrary, but you get the idea of how this has been done. Remember about weightage, what this weightage means is that each criteria has different weights based on how critical it is, right? So critical criteria is the most important feature which strongly impacts the scoring system. So these are the 2, scoop size and EAA content. These are the most important, right? So the ideal scoop size gets 15 points, right? If it's desirable, it gets 10 points. If it's a compromise, it gets 5 points, right? And the EAA content is similar. So the ones which are critical are the ones which will actually move the needle either way. The other are key criteria, which is type of whey, the sweetener, and BCAA content and leucine content, right? So these get slightly more marks. So it's graded slightly more. Basically it starts with 10 and then goes down, and the ones which are supporting and they don't contribute a lot to this scale overall and the total marks is those which are marked supporting, right? So this is pretty much how you can use this. And pro tip really is choose the ideal option in the critical criteria. So have at least 80 grams protein in that and have at least 12 grams of essential amino acids, right? Everything else is relatively secondary, and aim for as many ideal choices as you can when you are actually choosing the brand, right? So use this sheet to evaluate and compare different protein brands objectively, and I'm hoping that some of you will actually evaluate your brands using this and add your comments and the name of the brand and the score that you get, so that we can actually keep this discussion going, and everyone can benefit out of that. And please duplicate this sheet and save it in your own Google Drive, so that you can retain it for as long as you want, right? So this is pretty much the sheet, and I'm really hoping that you will go through this sheet, use it, spread it around. Remember that the link is in the description below, and please comment and let me know your scores. So that was the live demo of this scoring system or calculator. Overall, what we've learned from this lecture is read labels carefully, look at websites again very carefully, look at the ingredient list, use scoring systems that I have given you to select which brand is perhaps better, and importantly, keep quality before pricing and deals. That's because in the long run your health matters more than how much you spend, right? So also some of the best brands which you think are expensive might actually give you some deals in terms of 25% off or 35% off, maybe once in 2 or 3 months, and that's when you can stock up. So it can be done. You have to be on the lookout. In the next video, what we are going to do is actually look at some of the brands and compare them using this blueprint or scoring system or calculator that we have developed. And I'll give you some recommendations, especially my top 5 recommendations of what I consume and recommend, right? So, and I'm sure you can actually, look at your own supplements that you are using now, or some of them out there in the market, and, add your comments in terms of the name of the product and the score that you got, right? So, please do that, and stay tuned for the next lecture on different brands, where we'll look at 10 different brands which are there in the market, and we'll compare them across on the same sheet so that you know what is what. That is pretty much it for today. I hope you have liked this session and you're going to use this calculator that I have shown and do your own research and choose brands wisely. Stay tuned for the next one, which is coming up shortly, on comparison of different brands, which is going to be very exciting. Thanks so much for today, and see you around pretty soon.